Hello, everyone, and welcome to our January edition of 30 Minutes of Excellence. So, my name is Kim Meadows. I am the training director here at the National Association of Workforce Development Professionals. I'm excited to introduce our January presenters for this month for our session. So, presenting today is going to be Kevin Bauman. And Kevin is the Director of Workforce Development for Ed2Go, which is a part of Cengage Work, where he leads efforts to help bring employment opportunities to Ed2Go's 2,000 plus active student population. He has 25 plus years of experience spanning both the private and nonprofit sector, creating solutions that sit at the intersection of education, employment, and the workforce development system. And then also moderating for today is going to be Audrey Riley, and she is the Senior Product Marketing Manager for Ed2Go. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to our presenters to take us through our 30 Minutes of Excellence session for January. So Audrey, I'll turn it over to you. Or Kevin, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you so much, Kim. Audrey, I'll just go right into it, right? Yeah. Okay, good. So, good afternoon or good morning, depending upon where you are, everybody. Thanks for taking the time. Again, my name is Kevin Bauman, and one thing Kim mentioned, we have 200,000 active students, Kim, not just 2,000. So quite a national footprint of students in all sorts of career and vocational training. We partner with a lot of organizations, some of the organizations that I saw come up on the chat. So thank you to all our partners out there. And Audrey, you can go to the next slide for the agenda. And the way this will work is I'll probably go through this material fairly rapidly, and we encourage folks to type questions into the chat, and I'm going to leave a good amount of time at the end to answer those questions, or if anybody wants to unmute and ask questions, then we can do that. Today, what I want to kind of three main points here for this agenda. So we're going to talk about all of the data post-COVID around the growing acceptance of online and blended learning. And I really, I guess I want to bring that up as folks are thinking about program designs for their education and training programs. I know in a pre-COVID world, online learning was creeping forward, but we were still kind of really focused on classroom-based instruction. I think that genie is out of the bottle now, and we're not going back. So that would be good as you think about ways to train the folks that are coming into your centers. Then again, a growing emphasis on employer partners and what we're seeing from grant requirements and things along those lines, and then ways to to integrate them into your training. And then lastly, just a little bit on whether folks in the workforce world are keeping an eye on the short-term Pell Grant legislation that's moving through Congress. And just want to bring it to everyone's attention. It could be another source of funding for the individuals and the students that you serve when they come into their centers. Okay, so to that first topic. This is a graph that really does kind of show the exponential growth of online and blended learning solutions taking place in a post-COVID world. And I bring this up. I think that while digital literacy is important and first and foremost, certainly with a lot of the populations that we all serve today, older populations, refugee populations, my hypothesis is that over time, I believe a lot of the clients will require less digital literacy, as almost everybody is being exposed to some form of online education or online training through the normal K-12 system. So it's very hard to find somebody that hasn't had at least part of their curriculum delivered in an online or blended capacity. And one of the stats that I also want to point out here is that most students are expressing a preference for blended learning. So we really are seeing the best of both worlds unite here at the K-12 space. And I think a population is going to be coming through over time that's more blended learning and online learning ready than ever before. So just kind of keep that in mind as you're all thinking about program design and training programs that you may be implementing over the future. I would recommend not going strictly online, not going strictly classroom-based, but trying to bring both worlds together, because the completion rates that we're seeing and the preference of learning styles will support that modality. Okay, next slide, Audrey. Now, that's on the student side and from the student population dimension. What's interesting is, and Kim did point out my young age here and how long I've been doing this, but there's always been resistance, in my opinion, from the academic institutions and the tenured professors, and many of the teachers that have just designed and been teaching face-to-face instruction their entire career. What we're seeing now, though, post-COVID, is that even though there's a return to classroom instruction, you can see 2019, 96% of students were in classroom-based instruction. Even post-COVID, with a return to the learning environment and a brick-and-mortar campus, we're just not seeing that face-to-face reach anything to the degree that it was before. And there's folks that kind of watch this space are feeling that, for a variety of reasons, COVID speeding up the adoption of online and blended learning, also a retirement wave happening in both professors and the teaching profession at the K-12 space, that there's never been more time when most instructional educators and designers are thinking about a blended learning program. So we've got some great, we've kind of got the three legs of the stool. If you can go to the next slide there, Audrey. Finally, I guess we're thinking about the students and their willingness and adaptability and preference for blended learning programs. We're seeing colleges and universities and community colleges and teachers think about designing from the ground up these blended learning programs. And lastly, what we're seeing is employer acceptance of online credentials. We can all kind of go and think back to the time when somebody said, "Oh, I graduated from the University of Phoenix." There was probably some snickers in the room. There was probably some, "Oh, that's not a real degree." And, they were really pioneers at the higher education level at that time. But when you fast forward to today, over 55%, so more than half, are basically hiring managers and HR executives are really saying, "We really don't care. We're not so fixated on the input or the modality that people learned. We want them to demonstrate skills and competencies however they obtain them." And I think that's critical going forward, because ultimately in the workforce development sector, I believe the employers hold many, if not all, of the cards, because they are the folks that are hiring. And that, ultimately is the reason for education, the reason for short-term credentialing. It's not to pursue philosophical understanding of, why are we all here? Adult learners need a job, and they want to move up, and they want to have wage gains as a result. So next slide, Audrey. So I mentioned the three-legged stool. So this kind of, this kind of virtuous circle here, again, I'm just trying to put out there for frontline workers, or for curriculum designers, or for program designers, or for the leaders of the education and training component of the workforce boards or of the human service agencies. Think about, the best of both worlds. And what's interesting is that I think all three dimensions of this play a role in the actual education and training. So it's not as much linear as it used to be, where people go to college to learn, come to a workforce agency to do job exploration and resume writing, and then go apply and fill that job at the employer. What we're seeing more and more now, almost all grants coming out of the federal government are asking for employer partners to be front and center at the table with the coalitions that are applying. And we're also seeing many components of the education, clinical experience, apprenticeships, externships, actually take place at the employer location. So the learning doesn't end when the individual is on site. It's actually kind of the capstone project. So I would encourage everybody, strengthen your employer partnerships, understand the role that they can play, not only in the hiring of the people, but in the actual design and delivery of the training. The workforce agency, you hold all the magic to remove all of the traditional barriers that people face to success in education, the mental health, the digital literacy for today's population, the transportation issues, the childcare issues, all of that. You can provide those wraparound services. And then lastly, please remain in touch and work side by side with the community colleges and the academic institutions that are in your community. They can design and offload a lot of the curriculum development, or any training provider. Doesn't have to necessarily be the local college, but just keep in mind that it's really coming together, and it's not just a one size fits all or a linear path now to employment. All right, next slide there, Audrey. And this is another piece that kind of gets critical with the employer as training provider mentality. In the past, I think there's been, sometimes employers will say, it's difficult to engage with either the community college or the workforce board or other training providers. There's no way for us to kind of effectively and easily capture the skills and competencies that the individual is demonstrating on the job, either through the apprenticeships or the clinical practice. And so now, when you're thinking about training providers that you're partnering with, or curriculum that you're designing on your own, make sure that there's an easy way to capture what's taking place on site to feed back into the progress reports of the students. We all know progress reporting is imperative, that you report up on our students making measurable skill gains, or have they completed, or have they taken their credential a year upon exit. They all have mobile devices. And so this is a key component so that employers can quickly and easily monitor and provide feedback on the students that you're sending them, like I said, for those capstone projects. It's not enough today for training providers to simply provide a student LMS for the didactic portion, and then everything else happens on the employer site through sticky notes or notepads, and nobody knows if they've done it or not, or was it up to the standards. But we can kind of see that come together today. So again, I'm just kind of emphasizing things to keep in mind for future program designs as you're planning for this calendar year and the next fiscal year for the federal government. Okay, and lastly on this side, also just want to make sure we're thinking a little bit more broadly that, workforce boards and workforce agencies really can be a great source of talent for in-demand occupations in the sectors that they're serving. I think sometimes it's limited to maybe to the people that are walking into your door, and that's great. Those are the folks that you want to help and work with. However, if you think of the employer as your customer, if they have 20 jobs open, it may help to expand the marketplace of talent that you're working with, and not limit it to only the people coming into your center. There are a lot of individuals enrolled in programs that need jobs, but just haven't connected the dots. So it's possible that you could pull from places like Cengage Learning with 200,000 active learners. There's other places as well, LinkedIn Learning, Coursera. All of these have students in your area, and I would encourage everyone to kind of foster those connections, so that your talent pool that you're providing up to the employer partners is not limited to the people kind of coming into your four walls on a daily basis. And then lastly, also, incumbent workers, when you're designing programs, when you're thinking about training and upskilling, try to design and keep in mind the incumbent workforce for individuals to kind of move up the ladder in their chosen profession. I think sometimes today we kind of separate the two, that it's either workforce training or incumbent worker training. And, I would kind of argue that from the get-go, if we incorporate both of those types of student personas into what it is we're designing, that everyone will be better off as a result of that. Okay, next slide. So this is just a little bit about some legislation that's winding its way through Congress. It's called the bipartisan short-term Pell Act. And, I'm not sure if folks are aware of this or not, but from, a lot of us just kind of deal with WIOA and Department of Labor and other, health and human service agencies funding. But over on the Department of Education side, in the financial aid offices of our colleges, Pell grants have always been limited to 4 credit courses, so only really pursuing a college degree. There's legislation now that would open up funding for short-term credentialing, much like what individual training accounts and WIOA is funding today for the clients that you're serving. It has passed the House Committee on Labor and Education, and it will be going through the Senate, but it's strong bipartisan support. And what we're hearing is that early this year, so we're talking like maybe January, February, before some of these other continuing resolutions expire and the whole place comes to a grinding halt again, this may get passed. And so I'm just bringing it up to become familiar. It may be another source of funding that can supplement individual training accounts, or perhaps start with individual training, or perhaps start with the short-term Pell and then supplement that after the fact with the ITA account. But there are rules and regulations about it. You can kind of see some of the course hours. It's very similar to what are requirements for the eligible training provider list. So you're talking about 150 to 600, 8 to 15 weeks. It will be administered through the financial aid office. So FAFSA applications will really be the route to access this funding. You can go to the next slide there, Audrey. They're already in the legislation. There are responsibilities of the state workforce boards and the workforce agencies. So there certainly has to be a lens to make sure that the programs that are going to be funded from short-term Pell are aligned to the sector strategies and the in-demand occupations. And again, I think that's language that we're all used to and workforce agencies are used to. How well education institutions are aligning their offerings to jobs available in the region, I think they're moving in the right direction, but I think that you're going to bring a level of expertise around that when you collaborate or potentially collaborate with your academic partners. And again, they're going to play the role of accreditor and make sure that the quality is there as well. Next slide. And so the last thing I'd want to say on this is that they are going to be measuring outcomes, which I think is, again, a little new and different over on the Department of Education side. But they will be slightly different than WIOA, but very similar in nature. So you may just want to familiarize yourself and kind of get into the weeds a little bit. I'd say the major difference here is that they're really going to measure the difference in the average wages for 18 to 24-year-olds in that geography versus the gain in salary that resulted from the credential attainment. So it's not just are they employed in Q4 and or Q2 and Q4 after program completion. There is going to be some math and some data there around the salaries that they're earning. So just wanted to bring it up to everybody. It could potentially be a great source and a great way to refer clients that possibly have exhausted their individual training accounts, or maybe are not WIOA eligible, but they could be Pell eligible. So I think it's just another example of how the federal government is really starting to take short-term credentialing very seriously, as well as the reauthorization of WIOA is winding its way through as well. It's known as the Stronger Workforce for America Act, and there's going to be more requirements and more emphasis on those employer partnerships as well than what we've seen in the past. So again, getting a jump now on those employer partnerships is going to be critical. There's funding for apprenticeships in there as well. So I think we are kind of seeing all the players be brought to the table more so and emphasized to work more collaboratively than they have in in the past. Okay, so Audrey, next slide. Just kind of to wrap up my portion, we'll have 8 or 9 minutes for questions, just to kind of reemphasize. Please have the dialogue with the financial aid offices now about what's coming down the pike. Maybe you're working with them, maybe you're not. In my experience, I have not seen tight integrated relationships between workforce boards and financial aid offices at college. Varies by geography, I get that, but it's something you're going to want to think about. Same thing with the employer partners, and hopefully broaden your perception of them, not just as a place to land people into jobs, but to bring them into the curriculum and program design and have them play an active role in the training, make it easy for them through technology. And then lastly, like I said in the beginning, the genie's out of the bottle. We're not going to the face-to-face world exclusively anymore. And so most training programs and most training providers that you're working with, blended will be the way to go. It's preferred by students, it's accepted by employers, and more it's being designed into academic institutions as we speak. So that's where I'll end. And then we can open it up for questions. Maybe there were questions already in the chat. I wasn't really following along.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kevin. So at this point, if you have any questions, please do type them in the chat. One to kick us off. So with all of the FAFSA issues right now, do you anticipate a delay with the start of the funding for the Pell Grants?
I mean, who knows? Probably, I guess if we're talking about FAFSA and student aid and the government, I hope not, but at least the legislation is moving forward. But I can't necessarily answer if there's definitely going to be a delay or not. But I'm hoping against it. But as whoever mentioned that, there's always snags with the FAFSA.
I don't see any others quite yet. I know one question we tend to get often is what industries are most ripe for these types of programs?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And, we're seeing a lot of demand for blended learning programs in the healthcare industry. It's just, healthcare systems cannot find enough frontline workers for their medical assistants, for their phlebotomists, for their pharmacy technicians, for their radiologists, and those programs typically from the certifying boards require clinical experience. And so, blended learning delivery with employer involvement in the healthcare space is one that we're seeing happen quite a lot. And we're also seeing momentum based upon a lot of the funding that is passed in the federal government around clean tech, but is not necessarily started flowing yet. But clean tech programs around EV charging station repair and solar panel repair and heat pump and HVAC type programs that also require hands-on learning. That's where those industries are ripe for blended learning approaches.
Thank you. So we do have another one that came in. So what have you seen regarding competing for national remote employer partnerships? Where are those valuable remote jobs from? For communities, however, national organizations that can't partner with everyone?
Yeah, I mean, probably in that kind of a dimension, a lot of cybersecurity and information security and IT jobs, those very often can be done remotely, since it really is, logging in and working on systems behind the scenes. So that is a great opportunity where if you're training people and they're earning credentials in the information security sector, they really do have an opportunity to apply for jobs nationally. So that's one that comes to mind.
Any other questions? We'll give another minute or so to type any in the chat. I will mention too, I've put both Kevin and my contacts up here on the screen, so feel free to reach out to either of us directly if anything else pops up. And also if you're interested in learning more about Ed2Go, our website is on the bottom here.
Yeah, well, it's these are tough. You don't get a lot of feedback, but hopefully everybody could take away at least some nugget. I tried to keep it at a high level. Really appreciate the opportunity and want to thank everybody because I know so many people who are on the front lines of the workforce development sector. It's just incredible the work and the individual lives that you're all touching. So. I love that and keep up the great work. And I do think that over time, we're starting to see less emphasis on college degrees, more emphasis on skills and short-term training. And I think that's just going to bode very well for the clients that we all serve.
Yeah, and thank you to NADP as well for the opportunity to partner with you all. We're going to be attending the conference in the spring, so hope to see you all there as well.
Thank you both. And before I let you go, I see that Valerie has put a question in, so I will just ask Valerie's question to you, Kevin. And Valerie says, with soft skills or people skills, is that best delivered in person or online, in your opinion?
I'm going to say blended, not either one. I think that there is an opportunity. There are some great programs that have, simulations and role-based scenarios and kind of like choose your own ending to the story type situations around customer service. However, practicing that, right, really should be done in person. But I find that, there can be learning that takes place online at a self-paced, but coming together to kind of practice those and re-emphasize those and talk about some of those soft skills ultimately is kind of the best way.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you to Audrey and Kevin for joining us on our January 30 Minutes of Excellence session. You have been amazing. All of the PowerPoint, the slides will be emailed to everybody who registered, in addition to the YouTube link. So it will be on our YouTube page within 2 to 3 business days. So if you missed any part of it, or if you want to share it with your network, that will be available as well. So thank you all for joining us and have a great rest of your day.
Okay, thank you so much.